In today's video, we'll be looking at geoshells, what geoshells are, where we can find them, and how we can use them to the best of our ability. I'll also be discussing 3 ways on how we can use geoshells to make your character stand out, and I'll also be covering some tips and tricks to help you make the most of geoshells in the tutorial. I'm going to start that tutorial right now. So here we are in DAZSTUDIO, and today we're going to look at the very underrated geoshells. What are geoshells and how can we use them to create unique characters? So first of all, I've got my Genesis 8 male here, the Brute 8. And where do we find geoshells first of all in the menu? So to find geoshells, to actually activate geoshells, we go make sure our character is selected. So whether you've got a female or a male Genesis 8, 3 character, whatever, just make sure it's selected like this. And then go to create here at the top. And then you want to go to new geometry shell. Now you can name the shell if you want to, it doesn't really matter. And parent to selected item, which means parent it to the Brute 8, which is exactly what we want. So we just click accept really. And then you'll see that the actual geoshell creates this kind of glazed look on our male Genesis 8 male character. And that just means that the actual shell is active now. So the geoshell is active. So what I want to do explain first what the shell is. So basically the shell is just basically like a second skin. So it's a second skin, that's all it is. So it's basically taking the kind of overall image of, say, like the overall image of our Genesis 8 character here, and it's just applying a second skin onto it, a very thin layer of second skin. And the way we can check that is if we go to the parameters here, and if we go to the actual shell, so we're actually on the shell here, this is the geoshell here, this icon here means it's a geoshell. We click on the parameters tab, we expand it and then go to general. You can see here mesh offset here. So this is what it means. So from the actual skin, the actual where the actual original area of the actual Genesis 8 character is, it's 0.1 centimeters away from that. So the shell is very small distance away from the actual character. So that's all it is. And what we can do is obviously we can move the shell around, so we can actually increase the shell. So I can go bigger. You can see that it starts to get a bit weird. So as you can see, the distance of the shell, if I zoom in a bit more, is a bit better. You can see now the distance has physically increased. You can see the kind of, everything's gotten bigger and everything. And our offset distance has gone bigger. We can do the same. We go negative as well. Obviously, if you go negative, so go into the skin and you're not going to see everything. Okay. So there it is. And when we do like a quick IRA preview just to show what it looks like. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long to do the preview. There we go. That's what it looks like. The second skin, the geoshell is over this character. You can see like an outline here. And that's what the geoshell is. Okay. So let's reset that to the default settings. Alt. And if you just do Alt, oh, that's not supposed to be right. 0.1 is the default setting. There we go. Just get out of IRA preview mode. Okay. So what we can do now with the geoshell, with it selected, if we go to the surfaces, and then if we go to editor and then the actual surfaces here, and let's expand that. As you can see, the geoshell's got exactly the same surfaces as what the actual original character has. So if I click on the original character here in the scene tab, and then I go back to in the surfaces tab, and then if I just expand the Brute 8, you'll see that we just expand all the surfaces. You can see it's exactly the same surfaces. Okay, so we've got the arms, cornea, eyes, eye moisture, all these surfaces here are part of the Brute shell. When I click on the Brute shell now in the scene tab, you'll see everything's there. So it's basically made a second copy of everything that's with our character. Now, when you actually do a geoshell, it doesn't come up in the actual IRA shader. You have to apply the IRA shader. So it comes in like the, I think it's the 3D light shader for some reason. We don't like that one. IRA is way better because you can do so much more cool stuff with it. So we need to convert it. So we need to just highlight everything by clicking on this here, the top of the Brute shell. Go to presets, and then we go to shaders here, and then IRA Uber Base, double click that. And then when we go back to our editor tab here, you will see everything is back to the way it normally is. So our IRA shader is basically activated, IRA Uber shader. Okay, so what can we do with this shell? So what I'm going to do now is just apply a shader, any kind of shader. So I'm just going to go to IRA here, and I'm just going to apply something, one that we already have, so that everyone can use. We will go to metal is fine, and we'll choose one of these preset ones. We'll choose gold. Okay, So what's happened is, because I had everything highlighted in my surface tab, all these were highlighted, it's made everything gold. Okay, so it's applied the iris shader to everything. And when I do the preview, every element of our Genesis character is going to be gold like this. Now you may have seen in a previous tutorial where I was talking about iris shaders, and where I actually changed in that tutorial, say the arm, I got the arm, I think it was, or the whole arm, and I changed and I applied the iris shader directly to the actual arm on the actual Genesis character. That was not a good thing to do actually, because you can't really revert it. If you've gone too far forward, like the undo button, you won't be able to revert it. So using GeoShells is a great way to do that. So with our second skin, because if I just hide my second skin, you can see that our original character is untouched. So anything we apply to our second skin, our geometry shell, nothing happens to the original character, which is great, because sometimes we don't want to actually affect our original character. And sometimes when you affect the original character, it's hard to go back to the original settings. So GeoShells are great for that. It's a great way to add like a second layer and then use that effect, for example, on the actual shell instead of actually applying it on the original character. So I'm just going to bring this back, the visibility back. So now we know we can apply iris shader to, or any kind of shader to any specific area we want to. How can we control the geometry shell? So how can we control different parts? So there's several ways to achieve this. I'm going to show you all, I think there's 3 ways to achieve this. I'm going to show you all 3 ways we can achieve this. So the one way we can do it is we can go to the specific areas on the actual surfaces, say the face here, and we can say, I don't want the face to be all golden. So I can just go to the cutout opacity here, and then we could just remove that basically. And then there it is. So all the face has been taken out. So that's one way to do it. It's probably the long way to do it. You know, you can do it. So I can select all of them like this and say, I don't want cutout opacity at all. And I only want it for, say, the arms. So for the arms, I want the full cutout opacity. And there we go. So now we've got golden arms. Okay, so that's one way to do it. So I'm going to reset all this. So let me just reset all this. There we go. So everything is back to normal. The other way to do it is if you go to the parameters tab here, make sure the GeoShell is still selected, and you go to the shell section here. So if you expand that, and visibility, expand that again. And here we got 2 options. So we got surfaces and we got face groups. Okay. So surfaces are the exact same settings we had in our surfaces tab, which is here. So all these settings are here are in the parameters tab of this surfaces area. And all we would do then is we would just turn them off. So we say, I don't want it for the ears, and it will turn it off for the ears. Let's just zoom in a bit closer so you can see. There we go. And if I don't want it for the eye moisture, then it's not there. If I don't want it for the eye socket, it's not there. If I don't want it for the face, there you go. So that's another way of doing it. Okay. And then if you want to go into more detailed, like a lot more detail, we can go into the actual face groups. Now the face groups is the area where you would select, like when you hover your mouse over, it kind of selects that kind of area. So like here, upper neck, the neck lower. So this is like the face groups. So these are the face groups. Here, these abdomen lower, abdomen upper, chest lower. There's not all of the face groups are there, but a majority of the face groups. So face groups are like when you click on here, you're selecting these. This is the face group, okay? All right, left shoulder bend, that's the face group. Or rather, that's a bone actually. So not all the actual face groups are here. Okay, you can see as I move my mouse, these are the actual face groups, okay? So that's mid. Abdomen upper, I think it's called mid or something in the actual section. We'll go check that very quickly. We'll check that now, sorry. So let me just close that there. Sorry, expand that. I want to close the hip actually. I want to go back to the shell. So let's go to the face groups. So say abdomen here, I'm going to turn it off. You'll see the abdomen will turn off here. So that's the abdomen face group. Abdomen upper. So this is this upper abdomen. So you can see we're literally selecting the areas we don't want. Okay, that don't want to show up. Chest here. I don't want the chest to show up here. Chest upper, which is this bit here. And it can go on and on and on. So we can take off the head again. There you go. The hip, if you could see the hip, but you can't see it because it's hidden by its shorts there. So you can see how you can actually control the geoshells, what areas you want or don't want. So this bit here are the pectorials. So we can obviously search in here as well. So if I typed in PEC for pectorial, it'll come up. So left pectorial, right pectorial. I can turn them both off. There you go. Okay, and if I didn't want the legs, I could just type in legs here. Not legs, sorry. Thigh, I think it's called. TH. Oh, why is it not doing THI? Can't spell thigh. There we go, left thigh, right thigh, and turn them off. And you can see we're starting to deselect the areas we don't want. And I think we get down here lower. These are like the shin bones. So we type in shin here if I wanted to get that there. Shin, left shin, right shin. So you can see how we can really go and really make, we can really get to so much detail, the areas we don't want. In the actual GeoShell, whatever setting we put on the eye ray, we can literally go down to pretty much to the finger bones if you wanted to. So I can literally go up to the finger bones. If you keep going down, you'll see like over here, you see like L hand, which means left hand. So if I undo that, the left hand will be deselected. So remember, these bit here are different. These are the different face groups here. And as you keep going down, you can see left middle finger 1. So if I turn that off, you see the left middle finger go off. So you can go to a lot of detail in this way, the face groups. It is a long-winded way if you want to do the details, but it gives you a lot of control basically. So that's what I'm trying to say. You get a lot more control using the face groups to hide the specific sections you don't want. So you may have noticed one of the cons straight away is that if you have a look at the iris shader, there is a bit of overhead. It is very minimal overhead on your memory, so you don't want too many geoshells that are using a lot of the actual surfaces. Depending on how powerful your machine is, I don't think it makes much difference. In the actual thumbnail that I created for this, I used I think about 6 or 7 geoshells, but not all of the actual surfaces were active. So I don't think there's that much overhead, but there may be some overhead depending on your machine, what the specs are. I'm not too sure about. There's something you have to think about obviously when you're using a lot of geoshells and creating your kind of unique character. Another con obviously is over here down, if you look at the feet, you're not getting like shoes basically. So where the shoe would kind of cover the foot, you want to see the toes or anything like that. A shoe would cover the foot. So there is that. So with the actual thumbnail that I created with the for this tutorial, you can't see his toes or anything because I've deliberately made the lighting very low and I covered it up with post-it basically. So that's something you have to consider. You won't get actual like a shoe, for example, but you do get this outline of a foot. So there are some obviously cons to using. There's pros and cons to everything, obviously, and that's some of the cons to obviously using a geoshell. Now, obviously, the pros are we can create our cool, unique characters. We can apply any shader we want to any specific area of the body and really go into a lot of detail. So one of the things I want to just cover briefly now is I wanted to cover. So let's say at the moment it looks like, let's say we wanted to have a bit of distance between these sections here to create like a bit of depth to the actual, say, this metal object here, this metal arm here. So the way we would do that is we would go to our parameters tab, we go back to our general tab, and this is where we would use the mesh offset. Okay, so we can increase obviously very small values, so something like a 0.5, you don't want to go too much. And you can see now, because just ignore the eyes there, I know that looks a bit funny there. But you can see now we've got like separation here, a bit of separation here, creating like a bit of shadow and a bit of like it's actually not stuck to his skin. It's more like a piece of armor like he's put on. Okay, so you can do that with the offset distance. You can play around with the distance settings to create this really cool effect here. So if we actually, you can see it here as well in the neck here. So it looks like he's wearing a piece of armor and it's not actually stuck to his skin. So it gives that kind of look, the kind of distinct look. And I think the same thing happens with the foot here. You'll see that if I just turn it around a bit, there is a bit like he's wearing almost like a shoe here or some sort of covering for his foot. And you can see there's a bit of depth. So if we just go back up here, if I went crazy on the offset distance, I went something ridiculous like 5. You'll see things get a bit crazy, as you can see. It's just ignore this. This is the reason why this has gone like this is because if we go back to our surfaces, it's because it's on the eyes. So if I remove it from the eyes, where's the eyes? The irises, the lips, and the mouth. You'll see it should go back to normal. Pupils, scleria, teeth. There we go. Okay, so that's all it was. So yeah, as you can see now, it gets a bit crazy where it's not like it's too far from the skin and it doesn't look good at all. So you have to really think about, I mean, look at this, it looks a bit ridiculous. So that's the kind of another con of the geoshell. There's no thickness you can add, so to speak, to the geoshell, as you would do to real clothing or real armor. There's no thickness, as you can see over here. It's just basically very thin skin. That's exactly what it is, and that's the object. And that is the object basically. So if we go back to the offset and I put it back to 0.5, I think it was. Having it at pretty low values like 0.5 or even 0.3, you're giving that effect that it's thicker than it is by doing that. So that's one way you can kind of create that thickness effect, so to speak. Essentially, it's not thick. It's just very thin piece of material. So that's another con of geoshells. But from far away, you wouldn't notice that. It looks like he's wearing a piece of armor, yeah? I'm sure you can agree. Okay, so we can see how powerful the actual geoshells are. What else can we do? Now, what I'm going to do now is just put this back to... You can obviously have several geoshells, so I can add another one. So make sure I click on the character, the original character at the top here, the parent. And then I want to go to create and then new geometry shell. I can have as many geoshells as I want to, not a problem. Okay, and again, what happens is when you apply a geoshell, the original setting comes back on, the 3D light setting in the surfaces, and I need to just go to presets and go to IRA and just apply the IRA Uber base. There we go. And this time I'm going to apply, let's go back to metal, let's apply platinum. There we go. Okay. Probably not a good idea because they're similar colors to gold. Anyway. Okay, so again, we can go to the primary settings of this geoshell and we can remove the specific areas. So I'm going to go to surfaces. I don't want it for the arms because I want golden arms. I don't want it for the cornea. I don't want it for anything. I don't want it for the face. Lips, mouth, I don't want it. I don't want it for the pupils. But I do want it for the torso. Okay, so another thing I want to show you is, imagine that we're going to put this default setting back. So let me go back to the offset. I just want to show you what happens when you have two geoshells that have the same offset distance. Okay, so they're both on 0.1 and they're both on 0.1, and the reason why it hasn't happened is because I took it off the arms. Give it a second, let me just put the arms back on because that is where everything is. Arms, there we go. Okay, now I don't think this shows very well because it's not, well, actually you can see it. Don't know if you, yes, you can see it. There we go. So you can see you get this like strange effect here where there's two geoshells competing for the same space essentially. So you got both geoshells on 0.1 mesh offset. So we got the second one here, 0.1, and we got the original 0.1. Okay, you cannot have two geoshells on the same offset distance. It doesn't make sense. You can't have two skins on top of each other at the same distance. So what you do in this case is the second one, what I would do is just add one. So 0.11. That's all I need to do. Okay, and as you can see now, it's gone above. My second geoshell has gone above the original geoshell only by a distance of 0.1, so 0.11, and that's all I need to do. So if you ever have that problem where you want more than one geoshell, that's what you need to do. You need to just need to add another extra number, a very small value above it. So it's basically the second skin is above it. So if I just turn the arms off this again, you'll see that they're not competing. We're good. And we can have two geoshells. So I've got my metal torso here, and I've got my metal, my golden arms, if I wanted to do so. So they're not competing, great. So that's just something you need to think about so you don't get that error and start freaking out saying, oh, what's going on here? Now you know that the two geoshells are competing with each other, and you just need to change the distance by a very small value, and then they won't basically fight over the same space. Okay, so now I want to show you something a bit more advanced, which is the actual using the actual UVs that we have for Genesis 8 characters and Genesis 8.3 characters, the UVs. So what I'm going to do, link in the description box down below for you to download these actual UVs. They're part of the DAZ store basically. You can download them yourselves, but I had a bit of difficulty finding them in my library, but I found a link. So basically I've downloaded all those, and these are the UVs that I used to create the actual masks for the actual thumbnail that you guys are looking at for this video. I'm going to show you how we did that now. So basically I want a mask here around his eyes, for example. How did I do that? Okay, so I used the actual UVs to create this. So let's go into my Photoshop. Okay, so this is the actual Genesis 8 male UV here, and the link in the description box. So here's the actual Genesis 8 male UV without any textures on. So this is the original one that everybody gets. All the characters that people create, they use this as their base for creating textures basically. And I'm just going to apply one I've already done here already, the mask, which is going to be this one here. So basically what we're doing is we are creating a mask, basically, literally an alpha mask. I'm not trying to confuse you here. Maybe I'm confusing you. So this is just, we're creating like the cutout opacity. So what this is going to do is, remember the cutout, white, show everything that's white, and don't show anything that's black, basically hide everything that's black. So in this example, if I turn the opacity down here, you'll see what's going to happen is that anything that's in here, whatever color that's the base color in for the face will show here, and then the rest of it will be untouched basically. It'll just won't show. Okay, so that's what it means, if that's a bit clearer. Okay, so let's, I'm going to save this, save it as a JPEG. So I'm going to go to JPEG. I will save it in this folder here, Gen 38 UVs. So I'll just call it mask. Okay, so you don't need to use Photoshop. Obviously, you can use any photo editing software you want. So that's the cool thing about using these UVs that are already created. You can use any photo editing software. So let's go back to our DAZSTUDIO. So I want, say, I don't know, a golden mask here or whatever. So I need to go back to my original and I need to turn the face on. So let me go to surfaces and the face is on. Head on. That's what I wanted, the head on. There we go. Because if I took the face, then you wouldn't see that yet. That's why I need the head. Okay. Okay. So we got it on, great. Slight hiccup there, but there we go. So I need to go back to my surfaces tab for this original GeoShell that we created, the golden one. We go to surfaces, and then in the face section, I'm going to go to my cutout opacity and I'm going to apply that alpha mask. So if you can remember where I saved it, which is in here, and then the mask, and there you go. So obviously this doesn't have to be golden, it could be, or it doesn't even have to be metal, it could be any iris shader you want it to be. Alright, so that's how you would create a mask. That's how we would use the UVs to specifically place this section that we want to be, that we want to have this actual shader on basically. So we're literally having even more control now on how we can do this and how we can control exactly what part of the body, because the face is a bit difficult to control in terms of what you want. So that's another way you can use the cutout opacity to do that, which is exactly how I created the masks for the thumbnail that you guys saw earlier on when you clicked on the video. So the last thing I want to cover is a little bonus, if you stay till the end, is how we can use textures and apply really cool skin effects. So I'm going to just remove these for now. And I'm going to create another GeoShell. So create new GeoShell. Let's just add our lovely iris shader to it. So let's go back to that. Cool. Okay. No problem. And I'm specifically going to look at the torso. So I don't want anything. Actually, I don't want anything else. I just want the torso. So I'm just going to hide these. Cut to opacity 0. There we go. So I'm just going to play with the torso section, surface. So with these sections, we can obviously add our texture maps. So remember the free texture maps you can get that you probably already have, we can apply those. So what I normally do is I go to the normal section here, the normal map section, to add that kind of detail to the skin. So I would go here and do browse, and I'm just going to go to my textures folder here, PBR Textures, we will start off with, I'm going to start off with, let's try honeycomb. Right, honeycomb, and I want the normal map. Okay, and I'm going to just choose the base color for that as well. So I'm going to choose the honeycomb base color. You don't need to choose that. You can just select the color in here if you wanted to, whatever you wanted. If I didn't want to choose that, I can always deselect that and then choose a color here and say I wanted it on red. So you don't have to always choose that. But for this one, I'm just going to go back and choose that honey one. Base color, oops, the wrong one. Base color, there we go. Okay. So as you can see, it looks ridiculous at the moment because the actual tiles are too big. So what can we do? So you can obviously change the tiles using the horizontal tiles here. You can make them smaller. So we can go like 10 for the horizontal, 10 for the vertical. And there you go. Now he's got honeycomb skin. Okay. You can do it that way, or you can obviously go into, if you just reset back these to 1. If you click on the actual normal map here and you go to image editor, you've got the same settings here for the tiles. Okay, tile settings. So I can set it unique to the normal map only. So I could do 10. Actually, we'll go 20. 20. So I could do 20. And there we go. You can see it's gone really, really small. What's happened here? I just want to turn the capacity up. And the other thing I need to do is the base color as well. So basically what's happened is it only affects, if I set it for the image editor, it only affects the tiles for this, only for this normal map. It won't set it for anything else. Okay, so I need to go back to the base color here and set it for this as well. So I need to go image editor, instance tiling, and that's got to be the same as whatever I set in the normal map. So 20 each, and then it should look like that. There we go. Okay, so I recommend that you individually set the actual tiles because sometimes you might need to move the tiles here, like offset or anything, and then things get a bit weird when you start changing the tiles here, and then it starts affecting other areas. So probably something to consider anyway. So that's what we can do. We can obviously set the glossy layered weight, you know, how much glossy you want. You can always mess around with these settings, play with these settings. Now another thing we can do is we can use the cutout opacity again, but the actual cutout opacity for that's created for these maps here. So for example, if I did say this honeycomb SSS, you can see the areas that are black are going to be shown, and the ones that are white are going to be shown, and the ones that are black are going to stay. So you can see we get this like really crazy effect here. And obviously I need to change the image editor, the instance tiling here for this as well, so it matches with everything else. And there you go. Now you can see kind of like there's like a layer of skin, and it's kind of gaps there as well. So again, we can go to the parameter settings and go to our offset and probably increase the offset a bit, say by 0.3. There we go. So it looks like he's wearing some sort of clothing maybe. So this could actually be some kind of clothing if you wanted it to be. So that's an idea for you to do. You can use that for clothing. So if I go back to the surfaces tab, and in the cutout opacity, you can put anything you want. You don't have to always put anything like this. I could put this ambient one if I wanted to, and it give me a different effect basically. Or I can go and use this the roughness one, and you can see now there's more holes in there now, so he's wearing some kind of like weird vest thing going on. So you don't always have to put whatever is in there, and we can do the height one as well if I really want to do that, and you can see you get a different effect. So that's how you could possibly create clothing by using all these maps if you wanted to use these textures that you have already. These textures are from the 3ds website, so 3D textures. I'll put the link in the description box down below for that as well. If you want them, there's free textures. There's a lot of good free textures. I've actually gone and purchased the packs because they're really, really good, high quality stuff. That's up to you if you want to go buy the packs. But you can see now what you can do with GeoShells here. Right, I understand this tutorial is getting very, very long, but one thing else I want to cover just before I finish is how do I save, or rather how do we save these presets so we can use them on other characters, other Genesis 8 characters. And the way we do that, I'm going to show you right now. So make sure you select your character with the presets that are on, which is the Brute 8. and I'm going to go to File, Save As, and it's going to be a wearable preset just like we did with the defaults here, and I'm going to just call it GeoShell 1. And we get this lovely menu here, and the only thing we want to select are the geoshells that you've created or are actively using. So the only things I want to tick is the brute shell, the brute 8 shell, and the brute 8 shell number 3, because I'm not using number 2 now. So I just want those highlight ticked there, so they're all ticked, and you accept. Okay, that's great. Now I'm gonna just bring in another Genesis 8 character to show you that it doesn't matter about the size of the character. Like this brute 8 is a huge character. It will fit on any Genesis 8 character. It doesn't even matter what size they are, the kind of thickness of their body and everything. It will just apply to that character because it's independent of the actual UVs of this character or the way this character looks like. So I'm just going to bring my character out of hiding. So let me just do this very quickly. Just unhide these. There we go. Didn't need that. Okay, so there's my character here. This is Armstrong 8 from a Genesis 8 character. So I'm going to apply the actual wearable presets. So make sure my Genesis 8 male character is selected here in the actual scene tab. I'm going to go to my smart content. I'm going to again go to Saved Files, Preset, Wearables, and it should be here, GeoShell 1. And when I double click this, you'll see that it will just basically add those UVs that we were using, the actual, geoshells. And there you can see right there that it's basically copied it like for like. The position exactly of this mask is where it should be. This is exactly the way it should be, the exact same settings that we had here. So as you can see, it's independent of the way the character looks. You can have a huge character and it doesn't matter, like we got here in the Brute 8. And we can have a smaller character here and the actual geoshells will fit to it. So that's the great thing about geoshells. It will just literally fit to any character you've created it. So if you created something like this for your Genesis 8 female characters, whether the female character is big, small, short, fat, whatever, it doesn't matter what they look like, it'll still apply to that character as it should.